Thank you so much, Chair Klobuchar. I was going to note that I'd not been to any other committee where the chair yielded their time. I'm going to spend more time in the Rules Committee.
Don't get used to it around.
I do want to start by thanking Chair Klobuchar for her tireless efforts to shine a spotlight on the importance of preserving election integrity. Without efforts to protect this process, it is not an overstatement to worry about the future of democracy in our country, and I know our chair is committed to that. I want to appreciate our witnesses. Thanking Deputy Secretary Benna and Administrator Farley for doing the important work of safeguarding our elections every single day. Secretaries Fontes and Schmidt, you both have personally experienced threats and harassments because of your public service. Thank you for being here with us to talk about what we can do to make sure that what you experienced never happens again. Attorney Howard, I appreciate the opportunity to learn from subject matter experts and want to really pick up my questions with where you left off in your testimony in reference to what you have provided to the committee in your written materials. During the 2020 election, election workers in Shasta County, California, received threats that alluded to being lynched or shot for their role in the election process. On election day, those same workers discovered that a camera had been planted near their election office to monitor their movements to and from the office, putting at risk important personal information like the type of car they drive, their license plate. And then in September of 2022, California actually implemented a new law that would provide election workers with the option of keeping their home addresses confidential. It's critically important to this conversation to note that according to the Voting Rights Lab, 80% of election officials are women. And their gender identities are often a factor and a subject of their harassment and the threats that they received. So, Ms. Howard, I know that California's new law is just one small step at the state level to try and keep election workers safe. You made reference to your written testimony. Can you enumerate a bit more? What are other ways that we can work to practically protect election workers?
So I think there are multiple steps that Congress can take to better protect our election workers, including our election officials in Shasta County, which, as you know, continue to face very challenging circumstances. Kathy Darling Allen is the elections director there and one of the best in the country, and it's very unfortunate to see what she and her staff have gone through. So, for instance, Congress could expand the prohibitions against doxing so that federal prohibition includes election workers. So this would make it a criminal penalty to expose the personal identifying information of an election worker, such as their address, date of birth, etc., for the intent of enabling others to harass them, to go to their homes. So, we're aware of another official in Anchorage Alaska, who was responsible for certifying the election in 2020. He found a similar camera, which was typically used by hunters, mounted on a tree across from his home, pointed directly at his front door. So these sorts of common sense changes and bills would go a long way. And I also would say that, hearings such as this, where this committee is increasing awareness of these problems, sends a strong message to our election officials that you have their back and helps other federal officials, state officials, and local officials understand that this is a priority.
Thank you so much. Really quickly, Mr. Farley, I wanted to just appreciate the role that you lifted up for local officials who are every day doing the ins and outs, nuts and bolts of executing and securing the confidence in the execution of our elections. I just wanted to ask quickly if you could talk about the role of poll watchers. And if that is a relevant role to how you execute and administer elections there in Rutherford County.
Thank you, Senator. That's a good question. I mean, we welcome poll watchers.
We have them in every election, whether they're local, state, or federal elections. I mean, that's something, that's a part, and they should be able to carry their role out just like a poll worker or a candidate or anybody involved in the electoral process. They play a role. We have nothing to hide, so we welcome it.
And just quickly, Madam Chair, if I could follow up just with one quick question. Do you talked about the, not having different conversations in Rutherford than one might expect if you were just listening to national media. I wonder, just to follow up on a question of poll watchers, is it your experience that, or have you found any sort of trend in fact that would help to reveal for the rest of us as we're trying to learn best practices? Are there roles that poll watchers play in the sort of promulgation of election misinformation?
Well, my involvement with poll watchers because mainly they're people in our community. I mean, a lot of them, we know each other. And so they're there to make sure that a person who appears to vote, at least they get a provisional ballot in case there's something that needs to be remedied if they don't have the opportunity to vote. So I think this part is being allowed them to be able to execute their role, and we instruct our officers that they're there for a reason, and they're there as a cross-check, which in local elections, there are cross-checks throughout our entire system in Tennessee, and I'm assuming in all 50 states. So the poll watcher, they come into our office, they pick up their credential, they identify themselves, and they play just as important role as the poll official.
Very good. Thank you, Senator Butler.